Today we're going to be doing a tier list of the biggest distilleries in bourbon. Let's get into it. Hello everyone, welcome back to Brad's Bourbon Reviews. I'm Brad, and today we're going to look at 14 of the biggest distilleries in bourbon, and we're going to rank them on a tier list from S all the way down to D. I was going to include an F tier, but to be honest, I don't think there's any of these that qualify as an F tier. I mean, at least something can be redeemed about them. Some of these distilleries have a lot of brands underneath them. For example, Buffalo Trace is on this list. And so when we look at Buffalo Trace, we're not going to focus just on Buffalo Trace bourbon. We're going to focus on the entire brand portfolio and what they offer, and kind of grade it as a whole. So some of these distilleries are going to have a lot of things to talk about. Some of them only have one or two offerings, or things that are a little less interesting, but I think this is going to be a fun time. So in the tier list, S is the top, D is the lowest, and we're going to rank them inside of that tier list. And keep in mind, this is my personal opinion, and if you disagree, comment in the comments below. I'd love to hear what I got wrong in your opinion. So let's go ahead and go here with all of these. We're going to start off here with one of my favorite brands in all of bourbon, and we're going to talk about Old Forester. Now, Old Forester is part of Brown-Forman, but Old Forester, the distillery, really kind of just distills Old Forester stuff. They don't really source it. At least if they do, there's not a lot of common information about it. I don't believe they do. And for me, this one's a tough one because I like a lot of the base products from Old Forester, but the problem I have with them is like when you get up to like birthday bourbons and stuff, it's just not quite as good. But I think overall, they are a pretty solid distillery. And just because I put it here right this second doesn't mean that that's where it's going to stay. But I think we can put Old Forester solidly in B, at least for now. Maybe see where these other things kind of come to light. The core lineup of Old Forester is so good, but a lot of the stuff they do is like really hard to get and, weird and stuff. So I think B is appropriate. I think B is appropriate, at least for right now. Moving on to the next one. Up next, oh boy, this one's going to be controversial here. This is Maker's Mark. Now, here's my problem with Maker's Mark is kind of the same issue with Maker's Mark that I do Old Forester, where a lot of their stuff is just basic. Like you can kind of find all of the Old Forester stuff everywhere. You can kind of find all of the Maker's Mark stuff everywhere, with the exception of like cellar aged. But like their stuff's just okay. I do like wheated bourbon. There's obviously brands that I like more in wheated bourbon than Maker's Mark. I think it's fair to put them in D, but like at the top of D tier. I know there's one other distillery here that will be in the D tier because I am just personally not a fan of them. I think that's a good marker. I feel kind of the same way about them, but I think the other one I like a little bit less. They had some of the best special releases they've had in a long, long time, like the Maker's Mark VEP and all those kinds of things. Those wood finishing series are really, really good, but they just, especially lately, have just dropped the ball quite a bit. All right, moving on to the next one here. This is Buffalo Trace. I am personally a huge fan of Buffalo Trace. Now, the problem with the conversation is then MSRP, secondary pricing. And I just want people to remember that those insane secondary prices are not the fault of Buffalo Trace, except for the Weller Millennium. I don't know what they were doing when they priced it that high. That's why you still see them sitting around at liquor stores. I think as a whole, when you look from like their lowest shelf, like Benchmark and Ancient Age, to like the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection, it's hard to deny that they are one of, if not the best distilleries on the planet. I mean, they make truly incredible bourbon, especially at the top. I got to put them in S. I don't think there's going to be another S tier on. Well, there might be one more S tier on this list. I do wish that their products were more readily available, but it is kind of fun to chase those things if you're into that. If you're not into that, I totally understand. But like again, a $25 bottle of Buffalo Trace is phenomenal. You have Stag, you have George T. Stag, you have Handy, Blanton's, you have Eagle Rare. I mean, come on, Elmer T. Lee. Well, Elmer T. Lee is just fine. But like overall as a whole, I think that they are probably one of the best distilleries on the planet, if not arguably the best. That's going to make some people very happy and some people upset. I think the hate's a little overblown, and I think, I think they're fantastic. Moving on to the next one. This one's interesting because if you'd asked me this like a month ago, I probably would have put this lower than where I'm going to probably put it now. This is Jim Beam. I'm setting this down right here so I don't have to keep holding this while I'm talking, so it's not staying in B, but it's going to sit there for right this second. I fell in love with them, and we are talking about the distillery. We're not talking about just the white labeled Jim Beam. We're talking about the entirety of the distillery, and I have recently gone to the Jim Beam Distillery, and I fell in love with it. I had some of the best bourbon I've had this year at the Jim Beam Distillery, made by Jim Beam, being the lineage, and some of their Claremont Steep, I think is the name of the like little experimental things they do. Those were both phenomenal, and I really wish I had gotten that Claremont Steep, but I'll get it next time I'm up there. But they also, you have to keep in mind too, Jim Beam is Knob Creek, it is Jim Beam, it is Old Grandad. All of those are incredible bourbon brands, and they're not all amazing bourbons, but the brands themselves stand out, especially Knob Creek. and Old Grandad for me. I love those two brands. So it's an average though, right? So you have to go with Lineage is one of my favorite things I've had this year and probably a top 10 all time for me. It's really hard. And honestly, like even for a special release, a $250 bourbon of the year is not horrible in this bourbon market. I know that sounds crazy, but it is a really limited release and it's fantastic. But you also have to, since we're doing an average, you have to take the highest of the high and the lowest of the low, right? See, for Buffalo Trace, that was kind of easy because the lowest of the low for Buffalo Trace is what? Ancient Age or Benchmark, which are both great, for the price. And then you have the highest of highs, which is like the Buffalo Trace Antique Collection and all that stuff. So that's an easy one. This one's a little harder because I am not a fan of Jim Beam White Label. In recent years, I've become a fan of the Sunshine Blend and the Winter Reserve. They also make this thing called Beam 8 Star. It's really bad. Mostly vodka mixed with a little bit of whiskey. I'm not holding this against them whatsoever. This is not coming into account to that. Buffalo Trace doesn't really have a thing like that. Maybe Old Charter is close as you're going to get, but that's still not on the level of that. I got to say, I think on average, even though I put it there as a placeholder, I think B is actually an appropriate thing for that because it's not quite as good as some of the other ones on this list, but it is, it's good. I'm keeping it in B. I think B is the way to go for Jim Beam. All right, moving on to the next one. Oh boy. Despite my recent video on Heaven Hill and the event that they held, I still hold their brand in a high regard, and I think some of the bourbons that they have in their brand portfolio are some of the best things on the planet. Elijah Craig, Heaven Hill, Old Fitz, Evan Williams, like they have a bunch of staple brands, and I think that they are not quite S tier for me not because of the event. I'm genuinely taking my experience with that event out. I'm strictly talking about the bourbons that I've had from them and ranking them as like a brand ranking here. I think it's an A. I think they're really good. They're also one of those brands that do limited releases pretty well. I mean, if you live in Kentucky, if you don't live in Kentucky, it's kind of hard, but they do a lot of releasing at the distillery themselves. The events and the breakfast and stuff they do and the tours, and I think overall that they just do a really, really great job. I have not had a thing from Heaven Hill that I have not liked, and that includes Mellowcorn. And to me, that's like their lowest of the low, and their highest is like, an Old Fitz VVS or, a Heaven Hill 17. Those are both fantastic bottles. So I think that averages out to an A. I don't think they're as iconic as Buffalo Trace is necessarily, but I think that they have a lot of really, really great products, and I think they're pretty dope. So I'm a big fan of Heaven Hill, despite the criticism of that event. I think they're a great distillery that makes really great products. Moving on to the next one. See, this one's going to be hard for me. This is Jack Daniel's. My initial instinct is to throw it in S tier, and that's where it's going to land. Is it a better distillery than Buffalo Trace? I don't think so. I think Buffalo Trace has a more diverse lineup than Jack Daniel's does. As much as I love Jack Daniel's, all the heritage releases and the special things they do, the Jack 10, 12, and 14, those are all phenomenal bottles. They're all pretty much the same product. At least Buffalo Trace has different mash bills, different age statements. Jack Daniel's just does a thing very, very well. They've been consistent with for years. Buffalo Trace is the same thing, but they have more variety. There's not a wheated mash bill from Jack Daniel's. Jack Daniel's has one mash bill. Buffalo Trace has 4. They have their rye mash bill, they have the wheated mash bill, and then mash bill 1 and 2. Jack Daniel's is my favorite distillery on the planet. I love them so much. But if I'm being objective about it, I don't think that it's quite as good as the Buffalo Trace distillery if I'm being objective. If this was my own personal tier list, which I could do, I could interchange these and be happy with them. I think Jack Daniel's is just a little bit behind Buffalo Trace because of that. The fact that a lot of their stuff is similar and different age statements, different proofs, which again, Buffalo Trace does too, but again, different mash bills. So I will still put Jack Daniel's in S tier. I think it's phenomenal. Moving on to the next one. All right. This is a brand for me that has grown in my favor a lot since the first time I tried their first product. I'm torn on this one as well. I'm going to put them in the B tier behind Jim Beam. And I'm actually debating on moving Jim Beam up to the A tier because I think that I like them substantially more now than Old Forester. I'm moving Jim Beam to the A tier. Once you factor in Knob Creek, which is one of my favorite brands on the planet, I'm going to move Jim Beam to A tier. So I'm going to put Green River behind Old Forester because I do think technically I like Old Forester better, but I do like Green River quite a bit. I know that they're technically owned by Bardstown, but I'm going on the distilleries themselves, what the distillery makes, not who owns them. I think it's a good placement. And I think when I first got into bourbon, I really liked Old Forester, and I just feel like, I don't know if it's a different quality necessarily, but I just don't feel like they're as special as they used to be. I don't know. I don't know why, but I just kind of feel that way. Maybe I'll have to explore that one day and see why, but Green River being in B is a good spot. Moving on to the next one. All right, this one's Wild Turkey. I'm trying very hard not to just throw things in S tier, but let's be honest. The only issue anyone has with Wild Turkey is with their special release prices, and I totally understand. However, even though those bourbons are expensive, they are worth every single penny for the most part. I got the Beacon. I overpaid for it. I don't care. I was happy to do so, which I know I'm like the MSRP guy. For this one instance, I had to do it because I loved it so much. I think over the last 5 to 10 years, they have really done a great job changing their image from like cheap redneck bourbon, and I'm putting all that in quotes because I've talked to people who are not bourbon people who think that of Wild Turkey, and then you have them try something like, oh, that's really good. I mean, talk about, just over the last few years, the Russell's 13, the 15, the Beacons, the Master's Keep, the Generations, the 70th anniversary Jimmy Russell bottle, which was a $55 bottle, Wild Turkey 8-year, the introduction of 101 single barrels, the single Rickhouse stuff. I mean, like, I'm personally putting them behind Jack Daniels because I like Jack Daniels a little bit more, but I do think that Wild Turkey is one of the best distilleries on the planet, and it's one of my favorite distilleries to visit when I'm in Kentucky because it's so gorgeous. Moving on to the next one. All right, up next is Bardstown Bourbon Company. I'm going to go out on a limb, and this probably will get me a little bit of hate. I don't care. I'm putting them in C. I think they are grossly overrated. I like some of the stuff that I've had from them. As a whole, though, I think they are fine. I love the Origin series. I like some of the Discovery series. The Disco 13, the one they just released, is fantastic. It's Wild Turkey juice in the blend, so it's Wild Turkey. I mean, I know it's their distillery and all that stuff, but I'm trying not to get too in the weeds of all that stuff, but just pointing it out. I think they are fine, but I think for the most part, all the stuff they release is way too expensive. I mean, if you want to talk about the Wild Turkey releases being expensive, I mean, what you get from Bardstown is way less quality for the money. I would much rather pay $450 for a Beacon than $200 for like one of the Discovery series. That's like, they're fine, but they're not nearly as good as some of the stuff from other distilleries. The distillery itself is really cool. It's really pretty, but I don't find myself gravitating to anything from Bardstown. And it's not because I don't think their stuff is good, because it's fine, but I just don't think it's as good as any of these other distilleries except Maker's Mark. I'm going to leave Bardstown and see right now. I think that's how I think that's good. I think that's how I feel about it, because I think it's just okay. Moving on to the next one. Up next is Four Roses. This is another brand for me that I really started out loving. I've not cared as of recent what they do. I'm excited to get my hands on their special releases. The red label stuff, though, was not great. I do love small batch and small batch select and some of the single barrels and the barrel proof stuff. But again, for me, they don't do enough different stuff to warrant my constant interest unless it's a special release. And even then, those are really hard to come by. And it's just, they're kind of frustrating because I like them, but I can never find any of their stuff. I do like them, though. So I'm going to put them at the very end of B because I like them a lot. There's like something missing from them. I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but there's just something there that I just wish they would do more. Moving on to the next one. These next few are going to be pretty easy for me. We have Willet. I am putting Willet behind Maker's Mark in the D tier. I have not had anything from Willet that I've really liked. I think everything I've had from them has just been fine to not great. Again, talking about overpaying. I mean, some of the fact that like those purple tops are like $250 for an 8-year wheated bourbon is fucking crazy to me. It's crazy that anyone pays for those, and people fanboy for those things. And if that's what you're into, that's fantastic. I just think personally it's nuts. I think it's just insane that they charge that amount for anything from them, because and everyone's like, you got to try this one, and then I try it and I'm like, it's fine. I don't like it. It's fine. Not a fan of any of the stuff that I've ever had from Willet at all. The closest thing was probably one of the green top ryes, but I just was like, there's better ryes for a third of the price. You know, I just don't care about them. Moving on to the next one. This is Woodford Reserve. I feel exactly the same way about Woodford Reserve that I feel about Maker's Mark. Putting it right in the D tier. I don't care about them. They left such a horrible taste in my mouth with the double oak stuff. That whole thing was just a fucking absolute disaster. They don't do enough special releases, and when they do, they are very mediocre and very expensive. Their base product is okay. I've had one Woodford Reserve single barrel pick that I thought was exceptional, and it was at Chef Art Smith's Homecoming at Disney Springs and Disney World. And as good as that was still just okay. That's by far the best Woodford product I've ever had. I don't get it. I don't know. I'm not a fan of them. I never really have been, and I don't really see myself in the future unless they really do something different with some special releases or, different proof, just something different. I don't know. They just are so boring and basic to me. So they stay in the D tier, but and only slightly above Willet. And oh boy, here we go. Angel's Envy, another brand that I do not care about, but I do like better than Willet. So I'm going to put it, do I like Woodford Reserve more? No, I think I like Angel's Envy more, but it's close. Like I've never, you know what? No, I'm going to stay Woodford Reserve. I've only ever had a few things from Angel's Envy, and every time I've had something from them, I've been like, okay, it's fine. Not a fan of Angel's Envy. I did think their booth at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival this year was really cool though, so they did a really good job with that. Moving on to the last one. This next one is one that if I rated it any lower than a C, my fiance might get mad at me, but it's Bulleit Bourbon. The Bulleit Distillery is fine. I think they're average. They have like what, 4 or 5 releases. There's nothing crazy. We do have a thing called like a Master's blend from them that's like phenomenal. I would put it up against a lot of special releases from some of these other D-list distilleries, and I think it's better than any of their special releases. Plus you have the Bulleit Rye, which is like, it's become like the standard for rye in the industry. Like it or not, it's just kind of the case. They also did the 12-year rye, which I thought was even better, a little more age to it, fantastic. And then, you know, the 10-year bourbon from Bulleit is like shockingly good. You know, it's not going to win any awards, but it's pretty good. As a whole, I think anything from Bulleit is better than the D tier. So I'm going to put it in C, asterisk, because Holly loves them. I think they're okay, but that's it. Those are the biggest distilleries I could find for this list. I have some personal ones that I thought about throwing in there, but I actually think I'm going to make this a list. And if you would like to do it, I'll leave the link in the description. It's kind of fun to sit there and kind of break this stuff down. So comment down below. Let me know what you thought about my rankings here. While you're down there, make sure you leave a like and subscribe because we're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. I will see you guys on the next one. Until then, cheers. A big thank you to all the Patreon supporters you see on screen right now.